Hi everyone, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get started on this dress. Now I went ahead and bought this fabric from Hobby Lobby. It was just in the cotton section and it was super cheap. It was also on sale and I only needed half a yard, so it cost me a little under $2. I was really surprised when I checked out just how much of a discount I got on this fabric. It's navy blue with white polka dot. Now here I'm showing you my skirt. I went ahead and cut out my bodice pieces first, and all the fabric that's left over is what I'm planning on using for my skirt, which I'll just pleat it out and it'll kind of look like this. Now I went ahead and cut down the middle as you saw over there, and that's where I'm going to plan on putting the zipper. Now for the bodice pieces, you really don't need a pattern. I kind of made one and adjusted it off of one that I had, but you could also just use a shirt. You don't need a specific pattern to be able to create bodice pieces. Just make sure the front and back are the same and that the shoulders line up. That's the most important. Now this lining fabric that I'm using, I got over a year ago in the remnants bin at Joann's, so this was super cheap and it was just leftover scraps. And I barely had enough for the lining, so it was really useful to keep. Now when I was cutting out, I realized that I made a mistake. When I was cutting the back pieces, I gave myself an extra inch to create an area for the zipper, and I accidentally did that on my front piece. So my lining doesn't have that extra piece, but my front does. So now I need to problem solve what I'm going to do because I don't want to waste this section, so I decide just to sew it down. And if I do that, then it'll kind of create this little middle piece that kind of where I could put fake buttons and it'll look a little bit more decorative. I didn't want to just cut off that piece and sew it together and just create this line down the middle. That looked a little bit useless. So, problem solving when you make mistakes. Now that I have that piece, I'm just kind of making sure I have everything else going right. Make sure that the first step you do is sew together your shoulder seams. I usually give myself about the 3/8 of an inch of seam allowance. I find it easier when I have a little bit extra. Now that I have sewn this middle part down, I am going to iron it just so it lays nice and flat. I did think about doing a little top stitch down on it, but I didn't want to really see anything, and when I'm adding the lining, it'll tuck in the edges and I think it'll end up looking nice. Now you should have already done both your lining and your outside the shoulder pieces. Pretty simple, just make sure they are sewn together there. When you open them, it should be the nice pieces on the outside with the seams facing the other way. When you're doing the lining, you just want to make sure the seams are kind of going the opposite way so that when you put it together, the seams are hidden both on the inside. Just play around with it for a little bit and that'll make sense for you. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and attach my bodice pieces together. So here you can see my front piece right down the middle. So make sure that your right sides are always together. So the ugly seams, the shoulder seams, should both be facing outside. And that's how you can know that you did it right. So for attaching it, I'm just going to do the neck around the edges and the armholes. Just don't do the side of the bodice or the bottom of the bodice. And now that it is all connected, you're just going to flip it inside out. Alright, now it is flipped out the correct way. Make sure you iron out the edges really nicely. If you wanted to, you could do a top stitch around the neck and the arms at this point if you wanted. This I'm doing for such a young little girl at 6 months, so I'm going to wait on top stitching it until the end. Now, of course, we have this extra fabric at the end, which we will tuck in, and that's where our skirt is going to go. I have a tiny bit of extra strips, so I saved them for a little bit of a decorative edging on to this dress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my wrong sides together. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to use my serger and do a rolled hem. And so since I'm not flipping it inside or outside, I can just hem it like that, and that's why I'm going to do it. Alright, so here I've decided I'm going to do kind of a V shape, pulling it in towards the middle, going up around the shoulders and through the back. So here what I'm going to need to do is a gathering stitch. So a gathering stitch is pretty simple. You go to your sewing machine, do not backstitch at all, just sew straight through and use your longest stitch, and then you'll be able to pull. And once you pull, you're going to pull the bottom thread, and you need to be really careful because if you pull too hard, you're just going to break the thread. So just work at it really slowly until you get it together to the length that you want. I somehow lost how I sewed it down, so let me explain. So first I put it kind of backwards with the lining facing out, sewed down, pressed it down the other way, and then sewed again on top of it, creating a hidden seam underneath. So all you see in the lining is just the thread marks, and that raw edge is now hidden underneath it. I will have to clean up a lot of these threads. It was a little bit hard to do. I wish I'd had a lot more fabric so I could have cut some edges and it would have just made things a lot easier. To connect the bodice, just open it up just like I did, connect the correct pieces and sew straight along the edge. Once you do that, it'll fold back down and you'll have this perfect edging. Now here, this is where you could do a top stitch and just secure everything down around the armpits and around the neckline. I have decided not to do it around the arms because it is covered by these little sleeves that I've made, and I will debate whether to do the neck, and I might just save it for the end after I've done the zipper. Now I went through and connected my dress pieces, so here I have the full skirt, except for the edges where I'm going to be attaching the zipper. And I went through, measured it out, and very carefully pleated everything. And then I'm just going to open up the bodice right here, open it all the way straight across, make sure I'm matching up my middle section, and then I'm just going to sew straight down and make sure you're just connecting the blue pattern here and leaving the lining out. Here you can see the lining, which is not yet attached, so you're going to want to fold the raw edges in and place it over all the other raw edges. This makes it nice and smooth for baby. And honestly, when I'm doing this, I have done something called stitch in the ditch, which you pin it down and then stitch it from the front side right in that seam from the bodice to the skirt. But a lot of times it doesn't always match up really well for me, so I honestly recommend hand stitching down the lining first before doing that to make sure nothing's slipping away. Once you've done that, all you need to do is add in the zipper, which I already went ahead and did. I didn't want to show it because it is actually my first time doing a zipper at all, and I didn't want to show it just in case I really messed it up, but it was a lot simpler than I thought. So don't be as scared of zippers. It was really fun and it looks pretty nice, and I'm really happy with the results. Don't forget to embellish this dress. You could take some extra fabric and create a little bow right there in the middle. You could do different varying colors. Here I'm just kind of playing around with some ideas to figure out what I want to do on this dress. Yes, and don't forget the last step would be to hem the bottom of this dress. You could just do double fold up and do a nice little straight stitch across to hem it. But for me, since I have my nice serger machine, I'm going to do this nice pretty rolled hem to do a little white embellishing on the edge. After playing around with a couple of options, I've decided to go with 2 little fake buttons on the front. I think it looks cute, it adds in the extra white, and I absolutely love it. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and leave a comment below on what kind of dresses that you have made.